In this short clip, we're going to look at After Effects and the interface. Whether you use After Effects to animate a simple DVD title or create something a little bit more special with special effects, you generally follow the same basic workflow. So the After Effects interface facilitates your work and it adapts to each stage of production. So the main window is called the application window, and within that you've got these panels. And the panels are organized in this window in an arrangement called a workspace. So if we look up at the top, this is the applications window up here, and you'll basically be working within composition, layer, effects, and rendering, but we'll go over that later. Then underneath you'll see the tools panel. So if you're in the classic or essentials, the tools panel will always come up here, which is basically, it's similar to other softwares except that there's a few different, there's a puppet pin tool that you wouldn't see in Flash or Photoshop, and there's a few other things. There's a camera, and within that camera there's different types of cameras that work along the axes in 3D. Then we go to the project panel. So this is where your files will be imported. So you just go File, Import File, or from libraries, and they'll show up here. So you can have a number of different file types, and then when you click on one, it'll come up here with which file it is. It'll have an image. This is the composition panel, and this is where you'll see what's going on. And then we have underneath, we've got our timeline under here. And so once we drag our clips down into the timeline, we'll use the composition to create a new composition. And the composition is basically taking all those different layers and effects that you might have added to it and processing it into, or compositing it into one file, which is usually a video file. And within here you'll have things like switches, which will show different stylized filters and visibility and all sorts of information in there. You'll also have blending, motion blur, but this is the one that we'll be using mostly in this course because it's about 3D, and we'll cover that later. So here's your timeline. In this panel shows you the length of the file, and then over on this side, this is where we have the fun, which is the effects and presets. And you can just, if you're looking for something like particles, it'll go and find it for you. Particles. Okay, so and then you just drag it over to your layer on top of the file that you want to, and really easy stuff. So it looks complex in here, but you can the more you use it, the more quicker you'll be able to move around it. So as I mentioned before, the foundations of After Effects and what you'll be using is the composition layer, to create a composition, that is taking all those files and making it into one piece. The layers, and within layers, we'll have to go over that later, but you go to New, and then there'll be what type of layer you want to put into your timeline. Animation is another bit that you'll be working with, and the animation really is about making keyframes, which we'll cover, and different types of cameras, camera layers, and how you track with your camera, and so that will be another section we'll look at. And then the 3D down here, which will bring up your axes, your X, Y, Z axes in space, and you'll be able to work in space. And then finally rendering. and rendering is where it's going to take all those files and start putting it together and then creating something new. So that's a basic overview of the interface, and the best way is just to get started and play with it.